You're watching WION. In tonight's edition of Gravitas, we talk about India and Russia, how the relationship is changing. It does appear that New Delhi and Moscow are not the allies they used to be, while India continues to move closer to the United States. What of Russia's push for a Russia-India-China triangle? Because today, geopolitical shifts are pushing both Russia and India to broaden their friendships and alliances. China's looming strategic shadow over South Asia has prompted India to build ties with not only the US, also Japan, South Korea, among other countries. We focus on India and Russia ties. Where do they stand? What is the potential? Also, what are the factors at play here? To discuss this on the show, I'm joined in by Ambassador Achal Kumar Malhotra, former ambassador to Armenia and Georgia, also the Deputy Representative of India to the United Nations. Later on the show, I'm expecting Ambassador Gleb Ivashchenko, former Russian ambassador to South Korea, to join us on the show here. But first up, let's take a look at this report where Russia has denied any plans to join hands with Pakistan in the trade and energy corridor with China running through occupied Kashmir. But it underscores the drift in Delhi-Moscow ties. It also underscores how geopolitical shifts are pushing both these countries to broaden their basket of allies. Take a look.
You could call them the odd couple. Rivals during the Cold War, but in September, Russia and Pakistani troops were holding a joint military exercise in Pakistan. An announcement from Islamabad that Russia would join the China-Pakistan economic corridor running through occupied Kashmir raised hackles in Delhi. Moscow quickly issued a denial, but the incident suggested that ties between Delhi and Moscow were no longer as close. India has moved steadily closer to Washington in the last few years, buying aircraft, light arms, and signing a key logistics pact. The two countries did $110 billion in trade last year with a plan to increase it to $500 billion. Russia, too, has moved closer to China. It's a major supplier of oil and gas to Beijing. Russia has also been selling China top-of-the-line military equipment. For the first time, Russia agreed to sell some military-related equipment to China's ally Pakistan. The pundits say geopolitical shifts are pushing both countries to broaden their friendships and alliances. China's looming strategic shadow over South Asia has prompted India to build ties with not only the US, also Japan, South Korea, and other countries. Russia, isolated by the West after taking over Crimea, is using the China relationship to leverage its own position and find a market for its key exports: oil, gas, and arms. India and Russia recently sealed multi-million-dollar deals in arms, also assembly of helicopters, and more nuclear power plants. In that sense, it may be premature to write off that relationship. But yes, both sides need to keep communication lines open. Bureau Report, WION.
Let's talk about this. Ambassador Malhotra, thanks so much for joining us here this evening on Gravitas. Let me start by asking you, where, according to you, do the ties between India and Russia stand at this point in time?
Well, good evening. I think if you look at the ties between India and Russia, they have evolved over a period of 7 decades. And those 40 years of India's relations with the USSR, and then there was a 10 years pause after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, and the period from 2000 onwards till the advent of Prime Minister Modi with a massive mandate. I divide it into these 3 or 4 phases. We all know that during the first 40 years, from 50 to 90, India, despite its very high credentials of being the leadership of non-aligned movement, was still considered as an ally of the Soviet Union.
Right.
And frankly speaking, that was a period when the Soviet Union had indeed helped India in building its defense, its industry, even nuclear energy. And then after the disintegration, we entered a phase of pause, and the relations were, not at desired level. President Putin must get the credit for reviving the relations from 2000 onwards, and the strategic partnership which was, struck at that point of time has now been, these days it is described as a special privileged strategic partnership. But if you ask me frankly, in the last 2 or 3 years,
right,
particularly after the new BJP government has come to power, I think we are neither friends nor allies.
Okay.
India would like to be a partner of the Soviet Union, and both are being dictated by pragmatism and the the real politic that is dictating the behavior of various governments and various states worldwide, and also in this particular region.
Right.
So I think it's pragmatism that is.
It's interesting how you put it, Ambassador Malhotra. So what does India make then of the overtures that Russia keeps on making to Pakistan? We saw the joint military drills earlier this year. Then there was so much talk about Russia and the secret deal with Pakistan on the economic corridor, China-Pakistan economic corridor. Of course, Russia has very strongly denied those reports, but this tends to make New Delhi very uncomfortable, all this talk of proximity with Pakistan at this point. Do you think that plays as a factor in increasing that distance between the 7 decades of ties that India has shared with Russia?
Well, definitely today the level of relations that we have with Russia is nowhere closer to the kind of relations we had about in the say from 1950 to 1990s, or even from 2000 onwards for a certain number of years.
Right.
But we must understand, Russia is under pressure. Russia is under pressure from the West, from the USA. It is facing sanctions. It has a military industrial complex to sustain. It has to supply arms. And it has also sometimes to give a subtle message to India that if they will get closer to the West and the USA, then Russia may also like to exercise its options in the region and outside the region. But today I think the last two meetings, the last two summits in 2014, 15 and 16, at least they have put to rest some of the Russia's elements of distrust or mistrust they had developed vis-a-vis India. And now, while they are approaching China and Pakistan, they are also being, at least trying to be seen as being sensitive to our sensitivities. For example, when they entered into the military exercises, first they said they were doing so as to combat terrorism. Then they came forward and clarified they were not doing it in the Pak-occupied Kashmir. And now they have denied, the moment they heard about their participation in the China-Pakistan economic corridor, they realized that this is an issue very sensitive to us. And also we have also been addressing their concerns to a great extent. The kind of orders that we have placed on their defense,
right,
is very important. They are good from, they are useful from our perspective,
right,
but they also are in the interest of Russia. The new element that we have been able to add to our defense cooperation is that it's no more a supplier and buyer and sellers kind of a scenario. It is going to be a joint research, joint development. Even in the nuclear energy, they have agreed that
right,
some of the elements of the components that we are going to use for our nuclear reactors that we are going to buy from Russia will have indigenous Indian components. So I think there is a lot of realignment of thoughts, approaches, and
a lot of factors at play, Ambassador Malhotra. We must also remember that Russia is the only foreign country building nuclear power plants in India at this point in time. I'm pleased to welcome Ambassador Gleb Ivashchentsov, former Russian ambassador to South Korea, also the member of Russian International Affairs Council. Ambassador Ivashchentsov, this is Sana Khan from the WION studio here in New Delhi. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show. Let me start by asking you, where do you think the ties between Russia and India stand at this point in time? I know you've said this earlier, that Russia and India are made for each other. You were referring to their cooperation in the energy sector at the time.
I think Russia-India relations are at a very good point. I think they correspond to the previous strategic partnership. And actually, there is not a single sphere of human activity which is not covered by our cooperation. It's from applied medicine and they complete with space exploration and nuclear energy.
All right, and give us a sense of why do you think, this close proximity with Pakistan over the recent couple of, months, over the past 2-3 years, if I may say so, has, what has that got to do? Do you think that's going to redefine the way India and Russia have been working together for the last 7 decades?
You see, Russian-Indian partnership is of privileged character, and it has an independent value for us. We do not correlate our relations with India with our relations with any state.
Right. Ambassador Ivashensov, we'll try connecting with you in just a few moments because we really like to hear you out completely. There's some issues with your audio over there. In the meantime, let me go back to Ambassador Malhotra. Ambassador Malhotra, talking about the trade relations, we've seen a dramatic, decline between trade that goes on between India and Russia. It was 7.83 billion in 2015 and it's declined to 17.74% over 2014. So it's from 17% to almost 7%. That's a 10% decline in over a year. But looking at the energy cooperation, do you think there's still scope that India and Russia may continue to work together, or do you think India will systematically continue to shift that as well, towards the US?
Ms. Khan, I'll take your second question first.
Sure.
I think as far as the energy sector is concerned, particularly the civil nuclear energy sector is concerned, I think we have already struck a very deep rooted cooperation with Russia, and it's likely to continue for many, many years. And I think we already have made a commitment to buy as many as 12 nuclear reactors from Russia. I think the third unit is going to be launched, and then there are 8 more reactors, the sites for which are going to be finalized soon. So this cooperation is going to be the hallmark of cooperation between India and Russia for many, many years to come. We are also investing in the oil sector, trying to invest in various, we are trying to get concessions from Russia in their oil for the oil exploration.
That's
so
right.
Energy sector is going to I don't see any shift from here. In fact, for the civil nuclear energy cooperation, we are still struggling as far as the USA and many other countries are concerned. Yes, the trade and investment, this is an area of concern, and while we have a commitment to each other to triple it from $10 million to $30 million, we are witnessing a decline, overall decline. And I hope that the two countries, the kind of infrastructure fund which the two countries have agreed to establish to promote investments in each other during the last Goa summit will make some contribution. But ultimately, it is a mostly private sector driven area, and unless the two sides are able to create enabling environment both here in India and in Russia, the progress may or may not be very quick, may not be of the desired level.
Right.
So this is one weak area in where despite all the good relations, we have not been able to make much headway.
All right, Ambassador Malhotra, your closing comments. We've seen Russia advocate the RIC policy as well, the triangle policy, Russia, India, China. Do you think that will work? Because they do have some common areas where these countries can work together, terrorism being one. But given the anti-American tone of the triangle concept, do you think India may find difficult to sustain that sort of grouping as well?
Yes, RIC, Russia, India, China, or RIC as we like to call it, now has been in full-fledged existence for almost 10 years. And no doubt there are many areas where we three of us can work together.
Right.
But then on several global issues, we don't see eye to eye. I mean, even on the issue of global governance, our UN reforms, or our entry into nuclear export control regimes, we don't see eye to eye with China. China is in fact obstructing our entry into. So this is a forum where we have been managing to carry on, because it's better than having it rather than not having it. And then China has a compulsion of supporting Pakistan on almost every issue.
Right.
So even when you say terrorism, yes, theoretically each of the three countries have interest in combating terrorism. But when it comes to even a smaller issue of naming an individual as a terrorist, whose organization is already listed as a UN terrorist or terror organization,
right,
China is coming and blocking it.
Absolutely.
So we can give a lot of lip service to each other.
Point taken, Ambassador Malhotra. So, it's quite clear at this point that India is steadily moving closer to the US, but there is also a strengthening of the Russia-China ties at the same time. A lot of things really taking place simultaneously, defining how alliances shape up in the days to come. We'll leave it at that. Thanks so much, Ambassador Achal Kumar Malhotra, for joining us this evening. I'd also like to thank Ambassador Gleb Ivashenko for joining us earlier there from Moscow. We're taking a short break. We'll talk about another big story, a WION exclusive on the other side. Do stay with us.